The Rules Committee will come to order. We are here for consideration of H.R. 839, the HAMP Termination Act of 2011, and H.R. 861, the NSP Termination Act. And we're happy to welcome from our Committee on Financial Services our friends Ms. Biggert and Ms. Waters. Thank you both very much for being here. Before I call on the two of you, I'd like to, most of our colleagues have had the chance to meet clearly, without a doubt, the most famous person in the room, and it's not Rob Bishop. The most famous person in the room, Rob, shake hands with Dear Abby, who's right over your shoulder there. My friend Jean Phillips, whose mother was the famous Dear Abby, and Jean has continued the tradition, and she has actually been working very, very hard over the last hour, providing advice and counsel, not to me personally, but helping some of the key people with whom I have the privilege of working. So thank you very much, Jean, for being with us. And I will tell you that when she was here last time, Ms. Slaughter was presiding over this committee, and I asked her what she was hearing most, because she receives over 10,000 letters a week from people, and the biggest challenge then was the economy, and it still is today, and there are lots of things that need to be done, but she said we need to focus on job creation and economic growth, and that's exactly what we want to do, and that's our mission. I know Democrats and Republicans alike share the goal of creating jobs and get our economy back on track, and so as we seek to reduce the size and scope and reach of the federal government, we've got two pieces of legislation before us that are focused on doing just that. So I'd first like to recognize our very good friend from Illinois, Ms. Biggert. And without objection, any prepared remarks that you have will appear in the record in their entirety, and we welcome your summary.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Last week, the Committee on Financial Services considered and approved two bills, H.R. 861, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, Termination Act, and H.R. 839, the Home Affordable Program called HAMP Termination Act. I'm here to request that the Committee on Rules grant a structured rule with a pre-printed requirement for the consideration of each of these bills. In addition, I respectfully request that for H.R. 861, the Rules Committee grant a rule providing for 1 hour of general debate with the time to be equally divided between the majority and the minority of the Committee on Financial Services, and a structured amendment process to expedite the consideration of the bill on the House floor. I also respectfully request that for H.R. 839, the Rules Committee grant a rule providing for 1 hour of general debate with a time to be equally divided between the majority and the minority of the Committee on Financial Services, and a structured amendment process to expedite the consideration of the bill on the House floor. Further, I request that the rules provide any necessary waivers for consideration of these bills. Last week, the Financial Services Committee approved H.R. 861, the NSP Termination Act. The bill would end NSP and rescind all unobligated balances made available for the program, preventing up to $1 billion of taxpayer dollars from being spent. Congress has appropriated $7 billion to fund NSP through three different legislative efforts. NSP distributes these taxpayer dollars to state and local governments as well as nonprofit entities to purchase abandoned and foreclosed properties from lenders and servicers, and subsequently renovates and resells those properties. Does it stabilize neighborhoods? It doesn't. Homes scattered here and there across the country are affected. But the NSP program doesn't stabilize neighborhoods and certainly doesn't help homeowners. In fact, the program essentially allows lenders and servicers to offload their bad investments onto the taxpayer, forestalling the recovery of our housing market. The bottom line is that the federal government should not be in the home buying business. In fact, some critics have argued that NSP doesn't benefit at-risk homeowners facing foreclosure and may instead create perverse incentives for banks and other lenders to foreclose on troubled borrowers, worsening and prolonging the housing crisis. NSP also has been plagued with problems including lax reporting requirements and therefore a lack of accountability for expended funds. The Department of Housing and Urban Development Inspector General has identified multiple misuses of NSP money at the state level, and GAO has questioned whether HUD's information systems are capable of tracking the use of NSP money. Finally, there is no requirement that under the sale of a property, entities with remaining NSP dollars return the money to the federal government. It's a revolving fund. There's little evidence that taxpayer dollars are being used in a cost-effective manner. Rather than continue to spend the money we do not have on programs that do not work, Congress should focus on creating the certainty job creators need for economic activity and hiring. This means that we must root out government spending on ineffective programs like NSP. The other bill that we are considering is, and has been considered by our committee, is the HAMP Termination Act, which would put an end to the poster child for failed federal foreclosure mitigation programs. According to CBO, this bill would decrease direct spending by $1.4 billion over 10 years. Announced by the Obama administration in February of 2009, the HAMP program to date has spent $840 million of the more than $30 billion of TARP funds which were set aside for the program. With this extraordinary investment, the administration predicted that up to 4 million homeowners would receive help. However, sadly, the American homeowners, the program has been a failure and has done much more harm than good. While the program has completed mortgage modifications for around 580,000 homeowners, around 740,000 homeowners modifications have been canceled. The GAO has commented that, and I quote, more borrowers have had their trial modifications canceled than have received permanent modifications, end quote. Earlier this month, on March 2nd, the Financial Services Subcommittee on Insurance, Housing, and Community Opportunity received testimony from the Special Inspector General for TARP, SIG-TARP, Neil Barofsky, exposed more hazardous failings of the program and noted, and I quote, there have been countless published reports on HAMP participants who end up worse off for having engaged in a futile attempt to obtain the substantial relief that the program promised. Failed trial modifications often leave borrowers with more principal outstanding on their loans, less home equity, depleted savings, and worse credit scores, end quote. He continued by saying that, quote, worst of all, even in circumstances where they never missed a payment, they may face back payments, penalties, and even late fees that suddenly became due on their modified mortgages and that they are unable to pay, thus resulting in the very loss of their homes that HAMP is meant to prevent. Many of my constituents and homeowners around the country have reported that they were making their mortgage payments but lured into HAMP with a promise of relief. In the end, these homeowners ended up with no permanent modifications and tens of thousands of dollars deeper in debt. One of my constituents reported that, and I think I mentioned that in the last time we were here. Americans for Tax Reform submitted testimony for our March 2nd hearing and said, quote, HAMP has been the U.S. Treasury and Department of Housing and Urban Development's primary spending program for combating foreclosures, and the program has been a costly failure, end quote. HAMP has been plagued by problems from the start, and there's in my testimony, I will leave what others have said, but we need to break down the barriers that have delayed the housing recovery, including the expensive and ineffective government programs that have failed to help homeowners. Our nation faces a $14.1 trillion national debt, and economists agree that reducing government spending will create a more favorable environment for private sector job growth. That's exactly what unemployed Americans and homeowners need, a job and a paycheck, not a handout or failed taxpayer-funded government programs. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer the committee questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bigger. I have to recognize my fellow Angelino, Ms. Waters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for allowing me to come and testify on, can you hear me up there? On these bills that we have under consideration by the committee today. I did not come here today to be my normal advocate for HEMP and for NSP. I have debated these programs ad nauseum. I still support them. I want to do everything that I can to keep them around, but I know that we're at the point now where we'll be on the floor either with a structured amendment or an open amendment, and I simply want to make my amendments in order. And my amendments are very simple. If you can recall, on the two bills that we debated already, one was the FHA reform bill that would allow for citizens who were in danger of going into foreclosure to refinance under a very good program. And the second was the law that we had for unemployed homeowners. Now, if you can recall on the floor, I had an amendment that passed on FHA, and it passed with the support, of course, of both sides of the aisle. I came back with a similar amendment for the unemployed homeowners, and there was some confusion. Today, I'm coming with a similar amendment to the HEMP Termination Act of 2011. My first amendment, that is number 10, is to the HEMP Termination Act. This would require the Secretary of the Treasury to send a letter to HEMP applicants that they will not be considered for a modification due to termination of the program, and that they can contact their member of Congress for assistance in negotiating with or requiring a loan modification from their servicer. I don't know about any of you, but many of our members already have a designated person in their office because they get so many calls about loan modifications, and that person will help put them in touch with their servicer. We're not talking about intervening in the case in any way. We're simply talking about once people understand that these programs are no longer around, they call us and we put them in touch with who they should be working with. Now, I worked on Mr. McHenry with this. I offered it in our committee. He wanted to work on the language a little bit. Our staffs got together, they worked on the language. He's happy with it, I'm happy with it, and I would ask that it be made in order. The other amendment that I have is again about transparency and accountability. This is on NSP funds. This would simply require the Treasury to notify all of, I believe, the grantees. Just one moment, let me take a look at this. The first amendment was number 10, and it would require the Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development to send a notice to the NSP grantees that would have received funding under the third round of NSP. So we're away from HEMP now with that kind of notification telling people who are applying that they can't be considered. And now I'm on NSP, and we would like HUD to send a notice to the NSP grantees that would have received funding under the third round of NSP that the program has been terminated. And the notice would include the name and contact information for the member of Congress representing that grantee's district, along with a notice saying that the grantee can contact that member directly for assistance in mitigating foreclosed properties. And again, this would be a point of contact for them so that they can be directed.
Well, Ms. Waters, let me...
Yes, hold on one second.
I don't want to interrupt
Yes.
you, but I just would like to say that I've been working with our staff right now, and I will inform you that I'm going to recommend to the Rules Committee that every amendment that's been submitted to us be made in order.
Okay, then that would mean...
That means you don't have to keep flipping through
my
the pages.
two NSP amendments and my HEMP amendment
And,
from
you know,
Treasury
I'm very proud, as
and
you well
from
know.
HUD.
Last week I
Thank
voted
you.
in favor of both of your amendments, as you know, Ms. Waters. So.
You did. You told me that, and I looked up on the board, and you
You didn't
certainly
believe
had.
me?
Of course I believe
When
you.
I told you, you had to look it up still?
Absolutely. I was pointing to other people to tell them to follow your lead.
Oh, okay, cool, yeah. And look what happened. Actually, you were successful, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Miller, let me just say that we are working to make every amendment in order, which would include yours as well.
I have the bill, not the amendment. It's
You
my
have
bill.
what?
My bill is the neighborhood stabilization program.
And it's going to be in order. And
Then I don't need to say anything?
no, we're going to be considering it on the floor, but if you'd like to offer some comments to us, we'd certainly welcome them.
Well, this is a, I'll be very careful. I won't go into it. This program has suffered from a total lack of accountability. It's a program that was supposed to be one phase, ended up 3 phases. We're talking about $7 billion of federal dollars that were given away to cities, counties, and nonprofit organizations with virtually no accountability. And it was not equitably dispersed, Mr. Chairman. You're familiar with the foreclosures in L.A. County, San Bernardino County, and Orange County. One nonprofit corporation received more money in the second round than all 3 of those counties received in all 3 rounds. One nonprofit corporation got $137 million. And there's no requirement to pay a dime of it back to the federal government. No requirement to pay a dime of it back to anybody. Virtually, we sent them the money. You can buy houses, rehab houses. You can buy a house and tear it down. You can sell it if you want to. If the money comes back, it doesn't say where the money goes. One place it does not go is back to the federal government. So we're really concerned about jobs in this country. I know you're a good economist. If you look at the money multiplier system alone in the economy, we left
Don't insult me like that.
you're the chairman of rules. If you left $7 billion in the private sector, just using a 10-time multiplier would have equaled $70 billion worth of economic activity. We took $7 billion worth of taxpayers' monies. We did not stop one foreclosure. In fact, the people who lost their homes had to sit back and watch some government agency or nonprofit buy that home, rehab it in some cases, and sell it to somebody else perhaps for far less than the value of the home because there's no mandate that the property be sold for any given amount of money. And it could be virtually sold for $1 if they wanted to. So you've got $7 billion given away. Now the argument's going to be made, all the counties love the money and the cities love the money who received it. Well, you'd be a hypocrite if you took hundreds of millions of dollars or millions of dollars from the federal government and didn't say thank you. So you're not going to sit there saying I object to the program when you've already received your money. So that argument holds no water. The problem we have here is we have a $1.6 trillion budget deficit this year. We have $7 billion given away. We can save the last billion with zero accountability. Does not stop one foreclosure. Does not keep one person in their home who's currently losing their home. It just says we're giving the money away. I think it's time that we stop telling the American people we're going to take and tax you and then give your money away to somebody else and watch people going through foreclosure to watch some government agency or nonprofit buy that home and sell it at a discount to somebody else. It does not keep one person in their home, does not save taxpayer dollars. If it saved cities and counties dollars, it would be monies that they were going to spend themselves and they didn't because the federal government backfilled it. So there's no savings to anybody. It's just an expenditure of $7 billion. I think it's time for us to save the last $1 billion, and I'd appreciate you making my bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And let me just say to my friend Ms. Maloney here that I don't know if you were here, but I did say that I'm going to recommend that we make every germane amendment, every amendment that, unless it needs a waiver, it has to be a germane amendment made in order. I'm going to recommend that to the committee.
Thank you. We met with the officials, and they said they're germane. So.
Terrific. You met with the parliamentarians? Oh, I bet. Thank you very much. I have no questions, but let's see if anyone else might. Ms. Fox?
I have no questions. Thank you all very much.
Ms. Slaughter?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions, but having 4 members of the Finance Committee here, if I could just, it's the same subject, but it's not these bills. Could I just ask?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Floor
I'll be
yours.
very brief. Read yesterday in a newspaper that lots of people who had been foreclosed on by Bank of America, I think they mentioned what they'd done, had been given absolutely false information. A lot of them were told that they had to go through foreclosure before they could modify, which turned out not to be true. They were told just to sit and wait and keep paying the mortgage, and they'd hear from people. They never did. Are there any hearings planned to look into how many people really got rooked out there because people either didn't know what they were doing or just simply took advantage? And one other part of that, too, is advertisement that I heard yesterday that you can get a list of all foreclosed properties, and you can get a house with 2 bedrooms and 2 baths for $60 a month, which I think is so far-fetched, and God knows what the people who hold the list are going to charge people for looking at it. But if there's anything, too, that we could do to keep people from having some kind of false hope that they're going to get that, is any action being taken on those issues at all?
Well, I think we've recognized that the Bank of America, or that there has been this allegations, and I think that we probably, once we get, what we've been doing in, what we've been doing in housing right now has been, at the forefront.
The $60 amount I'm unaware of. That would be false advertising. Nobody's going to.
It is, and
We will be looking into
I wish you would. It's like those people who can get all your, see to it you don't ever have to pay income tax. A whole fraudulent mess out there that people are spending money on.
This issue's not going away.
Try to clean that up. All right, well,
Well,
thank you very much.
May I just say this, that's one of the reasons that I am presenting these bills on transparency and information, because once we close down these programs, you have these fraudulent people out there who will still be advertising that they can do loan modifications, and we need to be able to direct them to the right places. So I'm hopeful that we can get support to get this
We
information
need
out.
to be able
but
to
we
have
have-
some confidence in whatever they tell people is accurate.
We do have to remember that there's been 3.5 million modifications that have gone through from the private sector, so we don't want to paint the broad brush. But there's always those with the fraud, waste, fraud, and abuse, we call them, but that have tried to game the system, and we will be looking at that.
With a large number homeless, when I first got here into Congress, the fastest growing population of homeless in the United States were children under 5. The displacement and everything else that they're going through, which would maybe even be unnecessary had they been given the right information. It's pretty hard to live with.
Well, Mr. Hastings and I chair the homeless caucus, so you might want to, children's caucus, so you might want to get involved in that.
Absolutely. Thank
you. Well, let's just see if anybody else might have a question or two. So anybody else have any other questions for these distinguished witnesses? Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question for the minority members that are here. If your amendment is adopted, will you be voting yes on the underlying HR on final passage? That would be my question.
He's directing that to you, Ms. Biggert.
No.
We're the majority.
We're the majority.
I know it's difficult, but that.
Well, if the gentleman, let me just add to that. By the way, having voted for your amendment, I was wondering, since we both share the representation of Los Angeles, I wondered if I could just direct the calls that come to my office to your office, if that would be an
Well, if you watch 60 Minutes a few months back, you will see that I not only direct, but I take the calls myself. And I've learned a lot about loan modifications, and I didn't want to get into this discussion that Ms. Slaughter is talking about, but here's what we learned. We learned, number one, that every bank has different rules for how they do it. We don't have any standards. Number two, Bank of America has a loan mitigation department offshore with cookie-cutter responses to people who are seeking information about how to stay out of foreclosure. Number three, it has taken them a long time to staff up, to have people to deal with the onslaught of calls trying to get loan modifications. They were not well trained, and in talking with many of them, some of them didn't even know how to take into consideration all of the income that a person may have in order to be considered, like child care payments and other kinds of things. In addition to that, this business of losing paperwork is just off the scale.
Well, I very much appreciate you saying that. And I know that Mr. Webster asked specifically. I'll be voting in support of your amendment, and I think that his question is will you be supportive of the bill, assuming that the brilliant Maxine Waters amendment is accepted in on the floor?
You love my bill. You know you do. We're not going to spend $7 billion. You know what my bill is. Mr. Chairman, debating it for 2 days.
We'll give it every consideration.
She'll give it every consideration, Mr. Webster.
She's not voting for the bill.
Don't you answer for me?
Don't answer for him. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hastings.
before I ask a question, I ask unanimous consent and request to put Mr. Cardozo's statement into the record.
Without objection, Mr. Cardozo's statement will be included in the record. We know that he has a very high
Thank you very much,
foreclosure
Mr.
rate
Chairman.
there as a former member of the committee.
Let me ask any or all of you, do you feel that we have a foreclosure crisis in America?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Does any of what we are doing here today impact that foreclosure crisis in any way?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I would love to respond to that. Most of the foreclosures you see in this country are so-called subprime loans that were predatory by nature. Because I tried working on since about 2000 to have that predatory defined from subprime. The bill I have introduced to stop spending $7 billion does not save one homeowner's home. It does not stop one person's home from being foreclosed upon, period. In fact, the person has to watch their foreclosed home being bought by either some county, city, or private group, rehabbed in some cases, and sold to somebody else, not first offered to them. I offered bills in the past to allow banks to take their properties and lease them for up to 5 years. Passed UC out of the House, it sit in the Senate, nothing happened on it. Offered other bills to try to help to use federal dollars that would come back to the federal government to help some of these issues in counties and groups. But what we have here, this doesn't do one thing.
Mr. Miller, you do agree, though, that in some cities, some properties were rehabilitated and were put on the rental market in cities and areas where there were high foreclosure rates.
Well, yes, but you're putting the federal government and government agencies in direct competition with the private sector. There's no shortage of private groups out there that are willing to go buy foreclosed properties if they're put on the market. But you have a situation here, but we've given $6 billion away already to compete with private sector groups.
What would be the alternative? And I cite to my own neighborhood and a Commissioner, Troy Samuels, that was in my office less than 4 hours ago from Miramar, begging that we not close this stabilization program. He cited to me 112 properties that have been preserved. And so then the surrounding neighborhood, his argument is, benefits rather than have a rundown property in the neighborhood. Now, there are other things that people are doing that are private. The Homeowners Association in the little bitty middle-income neighborhood that I live, we have 6 foreclosures now. We had 7. And the Homeowners Association took it upon itself to cut the yard and keep the property up. Rundown property runs down values of property. So how would you ever get out of the housing crisis that we're in? And my final question to you would be, do you expect that there are going to be more foreclosed homes in America? And if so, what is your fix for the foreclosure problem?
Well, there are going to be more homes that are foreclosed upon.
There are?
There are.
How many would you
Oh, I have no idea how many loans are out there that are.
Would it surprise you that some argue that before the end of the year, more than 2 million and possibly as many 3 million
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Foreclosure?
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Well, what are we going to do about it?
This does not stop foreclosure, sir. What I'm trying to, Mr. Hastings, I'm arguing to you that this does not stop one foreclosure in this country, period.
I agree with you.
And there's no city or
neighborhoods.
county that's going to go say, don't send me money if the federal government's willing to write checks.
I
Well,
follow
the
where you're
gentleman,
coming from.
yes, let me just try and clear up something. My colleague from California has been saying over and over again that NSP does not stop any foreclosures. I think that he knows that it was not designed to stop foreclosures. NSP is just what you described. It is Neighborhood Stabilization Project. It's my legislation. It's designed to fix up those properties, to renovate those properties, or in some cases, if they're so terrible, to tear them down. They are dragging down the value of homes in the neighborhood. They are costing the cities money in their police and fire departments. They are places in some neighborhoods where criminals are using them with drugs. And so people who are trying to stay in these neighborhoods and keep up their homes are losing value. It's bad enough because of the economy that they're underwater. But even worse than that, when your neighborhood is dotted with boarded up properties and the weeds are growing up, the animals are taking over, you're losing value. And so we want these properties fixed up and we want them put back on the market. And both The cities, the counties, nonprofits, and the private sector participate in this program. The private sector is not excluded from participating in this program. This is,
Reclaim my time.
Yes.
Ms. Waters, Ms. Maloney had asked to be heard.
thank you.
We are digging our way out of this recession, but a big part of it is stabilizing the housing market. Economists have testified before our committee that housing is 25% of the economy. So we have to stabilize these foreclosures before we fully recover. We had 4 bills that have come before Congress, all designed by HUD and by Treasury to help Americans stay in their homes or help rehab those homes quickly to get them back on the market to stabilize, not only to help the individual, but to help the overall economy. The refinancing program would refinance and help people stay in their homes. The President has put a veto threat on that. He believes this will help people, and I believe strongly in it. The unemployment fund to help people unemployed stay in their homes was based on a program in Pennsylvania that has been highly successful, 78% successful in keeping people in their homes, as is the HAMP program. And the Neighborhood Stabilization Program is the only program. I've literally been called by mayors across this country, not just my own mayor from New York City, but other mayors in cities across this country on how valuable it has been in helping them save the property values, rehab, get the economy moving, and take this important sector that is 25% of our economy and put it back on track.
If I could reclaim my time, Ms. Biggert wanted to respond
Yes.
as well.
Thank you so much. As I said before, the private sector has modified 3.5 million modification loans, which is one way to solve the problem. I have in my district, and I went out to see one of the counties to ask them how this program worked, and they had received $5.5 million, and they had really restored 40 homes. So I thought, well, this is a really pretty good program, and in some cases it might be. It does help. The problem is that there is just this money that is going to these groups, going to the counties, going to the states, going to private entities or non-for-profits, and it's not ever coming back. It's just it really is a grant program. It really is, well, what we might call a gift. If they had done this and used the money, built the homes, sold them, why doesn't the money then come back to the U.S. Treasury rather than just keeping with the state or the county or whatever? So that's one of the problems that we have. We also, and I think we talked last time, we do have other programs, the HARP, the Hardest Hit Fund, Hope for homeowners. So we are, we're not denying that there's never going to be a program, but the private sector can do it too.
The thing, if I could reclaim my time, Ms. Biggert, the thing that bothers me most is we're getting rid of the program. We could possibly improve the program and address what I think you raise as legitimate or concern.
If the gentleman would yield,
Yeah.
because there is one other thing that with the way that the program is set up, and it's hard to talk about, but it does provide an incentive for some banks to actually foreclose, because then they get the property
Absolutely.
and can sell it and get the money back.
Absolutely.
And keep it.
And the
this-
people that made the mess
Yeah.
are making the money in the mess. Two final things, Mr. Chairman. One, I'd ask unanimous consent to include the National Foreclosure Prevention and Neighborhood Stabilization Task Force. I believe they wrote a letter to Ms. Biggert. It's a large number of groups that think this is a beneficial program.
Without objection, the letter will be...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I won't include in the record, but I just wish to read the headline from the Miami Herald from an August 30th, 2010 headline: South Florida benefits from neighborhood stabilization program. And I can cite to numerous municipalities in the various cities that I represent that have benefited. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for these witnesses? If not, thanks to all of you for being here. And as I said, any amendments that are in order, we will seek to include in the rule that will allow for them to be considered. And that's our goal here. And I will say that to Mr. Miller as he prepares. If your amendment has been cleared with the parliamentarian, it's our hope to make all of the amendments in order. I'm going to recommend that to the committee.
Sorry, what?
I'm going to recommend to the committee that if you're assuming your amendment's been cleared with the parliamentarian, I'm going to recommend that it be made in order. Oh, you don't have one? You got two amendments.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I have, within the last hour, heard that the CBO thinks there may be a cost associated with either version. It's the same basic idea behind both amendments. It may be, I strongly disagree with that.
Right.
But the CBO has said that, so they may not be ruled in order by the parliamentarian based upon the.
Yeah, it's our plan to make any amendments that meet the germaneness requirements and all in order. But if you'd like to testify on your amendment, we certainly welcome any thoughts you'd want to have with us.
All right, I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The debate last week about the FHA short finance program was almost all factually inaccurate, but the HAMP program truly has been a troubled program. It has not worked as well as it should. Now, the problem is not that it costs taxpayers money. It's not going to cost taxpayers money if Congress keeps the promise to make the financial industry pay for the TARP program, and this is money from the TARP program. So money saved on this is not taxpayer money saved on this. This is simply a boost to the profits of the financial sector. If you've been worrying about small children being visited with the cost of this, unless those small children are going to work on Wall Street in the next 2 years, it will not be a problem for them. But as I said, it has been a troubled program, not because it costs too much. In fact, the money allocated for it has not been spent because it has not worked very well. It has not worked to help people who really can't afford their homes but not their mortgages, avoid foreclosure, to get into more sustainable, modified mortgages. The program has been caustically criticized by SIGTARP, the Special Inspector General for the TARP program, as well as by the Congressional Oversight Panel, and I've criticized it. I've written opinion pieces in publications criticizing the program. I've criticized it in the Financial Services Committee. It is a program that needs to be reformed to work, but something needs to work to help families that can stay in their homes avoid foreclosure. Almost everyone who's dealt with the program has said the problem is the conduct of the big banks and how they manage or service the mortgages. And there have been all manner of explanations of what the problem has been. It's that they had contracts with investors that wouldn't let them modify, and the investors deny that. They've been overwhelmed by the sheer volume that they can hire some more people. That their compensation contracts rewards foreclosures more than it does modifications, although that is nonsensical from the interest of both the investors who actually own the mortgages and also for the homeowners, that there are conflicts of interest, that the big banks also were the ones who securitized mortgages, and by not modifying, they can kind of string out the investors and shield the banks as securitizers from investor suits, or they're protecting the value of second mortgages that their other affiliates within the bank hold. After a while, it all just begins to sound like the dog ate my homework. It's just one excuse after another, and after a while, I lose interest in which excuse is really true. The truth is the banks have behaved abysmally. And whether it's simple incompetence or some motive, they have acted very badly. And almost everyone who's dealt with the issue said there are some simple fixes that would go a long way, requiring that there be a single point of contact, that a homeowner knows who it is they're supposed to talk to, that there be a single electronic record, so you don't have different offices within the same bank dealing with the mortgage and not knowing what the other hand is doing, that there not be a dual track of proceeding to foreclosure. At the same time, the bank is telling the homeowner that they're working with them to try to modify the mortgage. That there not be this excuse that the agreement with the investors, the PSA, the pooling and servicing agreement it's called, forbids the foreclosures when in fact forbids modification when in fact that's not true. If they make that excuse, they've got to show it. And unless they've done those things, then they can't proceed to foreclosure. There is no doubt that will save a lot of foreclosures, and according to SIGTARP and COP, the Congressional Oversight Panel, it would make the program much more effective in avoiding foreclosure. What the CBO decided just within the last hour or two, I understand, is that what it might do is if you put in these rules, it might slow down Fannie and Freddie's foreclosures. Slowing down foreclosures is good for everybody. I mean, I know that the CBO concluded a year or two ago that money spent for for someone with high blood pressure on medication was a cost, but avoiding stroke, avoiding renal failure, et cetera, was not a savings. It is the same kind of logic that applies now in saying that this is going to cost money. Avoiding foreclosures saves an enormous amount of money, and these reforms, servicing reforms, would go a long way towards making HAMP work and helping people truly stay in their homes.
Well, thank you very much. The argument is actually similar to the one that we made in favor of Medicare Part D, if you remember that debate going back then about it had to do with the issue of prevention, and you brought up the health care issue. So I will say that, and I understand, and I think that the notion of being in the midst of foreclosure while forbearance is also being addressed as a valid concern. Was this you serve as a member of the committee? Did you offer this in the committee?
I did not. This is a separate legislation that I have been working on with Senator Brown, our former colleague, and will introduce probably this week. But it is certainly pertinent to the HAMP program, because every criticism of the HAMP program by SIGTARP, by the Congressional Oversight Panel, by all the others who criticize HAMP, and HAMP deserves a lot of criticism, is that it is the behavior of the banks in managing the mortgages and servicing the mortgages that has caused the program not to succeed. We know we can do it.
Let me just say that I do appreciate that, Mr. Miller, and your perspective on it. I mean, I'll just say that, as I said, I'm working to recommend to this committee that all germane amendments that have been cleared through the parliamentarian are made in order, and so that if you were able to do that, I would recommend that this committee make your amendment in order. But I'm just, under the circumstances, I'm not going to be able to at this point, unless, and if you want to work with the parliamentarian to address that. I mean, we
work with anyone I can work with.
Yeah. I mean, although we're going to be reporting this rule out in the next few minutes, so
that may take quick work.
Yeah, I think that it might. But any questions at all for Mr. Miller? Thank you very.
Statement, if I could. I think Mr. Miller is one of our more thoughtful members. I commented, I think, before you came in about what Bank of America has been accused of doing. Did you hear? I talked about that.
They've been accused. What have they been accused of today?
But they've been they were giving people absolutely wrong information on how to modify.
That is not exclusive to Bank of America.
Every
servicer, all the big servicers, let me put it that way, have. Now there are some independent servicers that do it differently, that have more staff. They're actually trained. They actually talk to homeowners. They tailor modifications to those particular homeowners, and the upfront costs are a little more, but their loss experience is greatly less, and they are saving a lot of money. If the servicers would behave that way, it would save taxpayers. It would save foreclosures. Until we put a floor under the housing market, we are not going to have a strong economic recovery. We can't have a healthy economy and have the housing sector this sick. It is just too big a part of our overall economy. And the abuses or the alleged abuses by the servicers, by the big banks, and how they've handled these mortgages is just long, from making up the chain of title, fraudulent affidavits. Making up fees, adding on fees that the homeowner can't possibly contest, and then pushing someone into foreclosure because of invalid fees, and on and on. Their conduct has been reprehensible. I do criticize the Obama administration for letting that happen. They didn't make them do those things, but they let them do those things to much more of an extent than they should have. They should have been much tougher, and if they had been tougher, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your interest in this as well. I understand there are a lot of people in your area who are affected by this. There is every reason to think that in the next few months there will be some decent servicing standards, either through the global settlement between the various federal agencies, the state attorney generals, and the servicers, or through regulation under the CFPB, the Consumers Financial Protection Bureau. And that should make that should improve greatly upon the experience that we've had in the past.
Well, I can't see the difference between what they did and fraud.
There is none.
And I don't know whose responsibility it is to call that down. Would that be Treasury?
There obviously has been some outright fraud, and I understand that that is a legal term. There's both civil fraud and criminal fraud, but signing an affidavit that is not true as well as perjury. And there almost certainly has been some criminal fraud and certainly some civil fraud in all this. And there also has been just stunning stupidity, like don't know how to breathe through your nose stupidity. Can't breathe with your mouth closed stupidity. And until we get servicing fixed, we're not going to fix the foreclosure problem.
Well, Mr. Hastings, in a conversation with Ms. Biggert, they indicated that some banks want to foreclose, want to get your property so that they can resell it. I mean,
again, it's hard to know what all the reasons are, and a lot of reasons have been offered, and the banks, of course, dispute it all. Conflicts of interest. That is more profitable for them, not for people on either side of the transactions, for them to foreclose instead of modify. There's a long list of reasons that might be the explanation, but it is also possible there's a lot of just plain old incompetence too.
Would there be any way to calculate how much that $6 billion that everybody admits did not work well that was spent by HAMP, I think?
I'm sorry, I thought they'd only spent about $1 billion.
I believe they said 6.
Is it 6? Okay.
How much of that could just be attributable to fraud? Because then once again the banks have defrauded us.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because it's tax money.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can figure out a way to do that. It's tax money, but it's tax money that's going to be kicked back in for that the financial industry under the
under TARP.
Under TARP, they're the ones who pay for it, not innocent taxpayers.
Right. Thanks.
Thank
you very much, Mr. Miller. Appreciate your being here. I see that our friends Ms. Richardson and Ms. Jackson-Lee are both here. Let me say that to both of you that I'm going to recommend to the committee that any amendments that comply with the rules of the House, I'm going to recommend are made in order. And so it would mean that if you have amendments that meet the germaneous requirement, have been cleared with the parliamentarian, that I don't know what this committee will do, but I know that I'm going to be voting in favor of making the amendments in order. I hope that a couple of people might follow me in my recommendation that our colleagues have a chance to be heard on the House floor, but I just want you to know before you testify that that's my intent. So I don't know if your amendments have, in fact...
Well, actually, we were going to put your statement in the record.
We have your statement to put in the record that...
All right.
That both Ms. Slaughter and I have perused your statement here, and so
we prove it.
Yeah, we do. I don't want to say necessarily that I'm committed to supporting your amendment, but if it does comply, I'm going to recommend that it be made in order. So, with that, if you all would like to be heard, you're welcome to. And
I would just summarize one.
Okay, please.
First of all, I'd like to request unanimous consent to submit a chart into the record that you might.
Okay, was it included in your statement here?
You do have.
Do you want this done?
We have your statement, and Ms. Slaughter was just prepared to enter your entire statement in the record.
The whole statement in the record?
I do. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so your entire statement, chart, and everything without objection will appear in the record.
And I thank you for reviewing this seriously as we put it together.
Good, and I hope that your amendment does, in fact, comply with the rules of the House. And as I said, if it does, then I'm going to recommend that it be made in order.
Thank you, sir. And I look forward to your support on it as well.
Well, I don't want to make that commitment, but I'm just working to try and allow amendments to be considered and debated on the House floor. I'll certainly listen to whatever arguments that you propound on it.
I look forward to it, sir.
Let me ask unanimous consent to put the administration's...
Without objection, the administration's
on both bills.
statement of administration policy will be put in the record.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you very much, and ask unanimous consent to put my statements in the record and ask support for the two amendments that I have under 861 and the one I have under 839.
Right, and I understand that one of them is germane and the other is not.
There are two under 861,
right,
and one under 839. So I think I might have 2 out of 3. But
I think that may be it. But I mean, that needs to be cleared with the parliamentarian, which is what we have been doing. And again, it's our intent to make in order any Democrat or Republican amendment that has been submitted to us that complies with the rules of the House, meaning obviously germaneness and Cutco and other rules of the House. So that's our intent.
My only statement would be, beside these, is that I believe it's important to mend it and not end it for both of these bills that have an enormous impact on our
Good.
communities.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you for your
thanks to-
time, all of you.
Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Let me just say to our colleagues that, do we have anyone else who's, oh, I thought, Don, you were pointing to someone else who wanted to testify here. Let me just say that we are waiting. There have been a couple of amendments, Democratic amendments. We're working to make an order. We're working with the parliamentarian. I was told that it would be up in about 10 minutes, and that was an hour ago. So, no, not quite an hour ago, but it was a few minutes ago. And so why don't I consult with staff, recess the committee momentarily, and see when we might expect to have the rule coming forward. Yeah. Well, this concludes the hearing portion, and we're going to recess, okay? So what can you tell me? 10 minutes are not up? Yep. Okay, so we're just going to stay in recess, and we hope to be very, very brief. Okay. The Rules Committee will reconvene so that we consider the rule. Let me first express my appreciation of the committee. We wanted to make sure that we were able to make every amendment that complied with the rules of the House in order, and there was an amendment by Ms. Castor that was in question, and so we worked to do that, and so I'm happy to report as Mr. Sessions prepares to offer the motion. I'm happy to report that we have been able to make in order every amendment that complies with the rules of the House that was submitted from both Democrats and Republicans, so we'll be able to have a full debate on that. So we can proceed, and I will call on the gentleman from Dallas for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 839, the HAMP Termination Act of 2011, a structured rule. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of H.R. 839. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services. The rule provides that the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Financial Services now printed in the bill shall be considered as an original bill for the purpose of amendment and shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule further makes an order only those amendments printed in Part A of the Rules Committee report. Each amendment made in order may be offered only in the order printed in the report and may be offered only by a member designated in the report. Shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and opponent. Shall not be subject to amendment and shall not be subject to a demand for the division of the question in the House or Committee of the whole. All points of order against the amendment are waived. The rule provides one motion to recommit H.R. 839 with or without instructions. The rule further provides a structured rule for consideration of H.R. 861, the NSP Termination Act. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of H.R. 861. The resolution provides 1 hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services. The rule provides that the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Financial Services now printed in the bill shall be considered as an original bill for the purpose of amendment and the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule makes in order only those amendments printed in Part B of the Rules Committee report accompanying the resolution. Each amendment made in order may be considered only in the order printed in the report, except that amendment number 9 and 10 may be offered only in block, may be offered by a member designee in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and opponent, shall not be subject to amendment and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the whole. All points of order against the amendment are waived. The rule provides one motion to recommit H.R. 861 with or without instruction.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman. Let me just say at the outset that this is not an open rule. It's not an open rule, but it's about as close to it as you can get under a structured process. We did seek, I asked at the end of last week for members to submit amendments to the committee, and we were able to, as I said, make every amendment that complies with the rules of the House in order. The main reason that we're doing this under a structured rule is that if you look at the scheduling issues that we have under this new structure, we're trying to have as open a process as we possibly can, while at the same time not holding votes before 1 o'clock, which you saw today. We recessed for about 5 minutes because I actually asked the question. We had come into session at 12, allowing for committees to hold their hearings and have markups and all, and we recessed for about 5 minutes so that we could, in fact, ensure that we didn't have that vote until 1 o'clock, and we're trying to have votes conclude by 7 p.m., and of course, we have the resolution that Mr. Kucinich has on Afghanistan coming up this week. We have the National Public Radio legislation that is coming up, and so for that reason, as we looked at this, allowing for a free-flowing debate on all of the amendments that have been submitted is what we have been desirous of accomplishing here, and I feel that since we've made every amendment that has been submitted that complies with the rules of the House in order, that it should be able to be reported out as such. So if there are any amendments, Mr. Hastings?
Mr. Chairman, I offer certain commendations at the very same time, close but no cigar.
I've said this is not an open rule.
I understand. I just wanted you to know we're getting there.
I'm not
And-
asking for too many kudos, but
Yeah, Mr.
even
Chairman.
modest ones we appreciate.
Well, I gave you what I could give you. Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, I have an
And I
amendment to the
appreciate it
rule.
very greatly.
And I move the committee grant H.R. 839 and H.R. 861 and open rule.
You've heard the
Open
mo-
rules.
What's going to be one rule that will allow for consideration of both measures. So
All
you've heard the motion of the gentleman. Any further discussion? If not, the vote occurs on the Hastings amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair. The noes have it. The noes have it. The motion.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions?
No.
Ms. Fox?
No.
Mr. Bishop? No. Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Nugent? No. Mr. Scott? Mr. Webster? No. Ms. Slaughter? Mr. McGovern? Mr. Hastings?
Yes.
Mr. Poles? Aye. Mr. Chairman?
No. The clerk report the total.
2 yeas, 7 nays.
And the motion is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? If not, the vote occurs on the motion of the gentleman from Dallas. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair. Oh, I'm sorry. The gentleman has an amendment to the rule. The chair is happy to recognize the gentleman from Boulder.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order to provide appropriate waivers for the following amendments: H.R. 839, amendment number 1 by Mr. Cardoza, amendment number 2 by Mr. McCarthy, and number 9 by Brad Miller, and the following amendments: H.R. 861, number 1 by Mr. Cardoza, number 5 by Mr. Cicilline, and number 13 and 14 by Ms. Jackson.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman, and I think that I've explained that we've made all the amendments in order that comply with the rules of the House, and these require waivers, so I'm going to encourage a no vote on the gentleman's amendment. And as you know, I was trying to encourage the witnesses to see if there would be a way that they could fashion their amendments so that they would comply with the rules of the House, and indicated that if we had been able to do that, we would have certainly hoped to make the amendments in order, so I'm going to encourage a no vote. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair. The noes have it. The noes have it. The motion is agreed to. Clerk, call the roll.
No. Ms. Fox?
No.
Mr. Bishop? No. Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Nugent? No. Mr. Scott? Mr. Webster? No. Ms. Slaughter? Mr. McGovern? Mr. Hastings? Aye. Mr. Poles? Aye. Mr. Chairman?
No. The clerk report the total.
2 yeas, 7 nays.
And the motion is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? Sure? No more amendments? Okay, positive? Well, let me have the vote on the amendment, and then I'll tell you, okay?
All right.
Of the motion. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. And Mr. Sessions will be managing for the majority,
And Mr. Polis will be.
and Mr. Polis for the minority. Now, what was your question?
Whether you know at this time what time we will meet.
What time we'll meet on the next week? It's 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Mr. Polis.
I'd like to thank the chairman for working with the members to help get their amendments in order.
Well, I appreciate that compliment. I take that even a step further than the very nice compliment I got from Mr. Hastings. So thank you very much, and we'll continue to try our doggonest to do that. Thank you all very much for that objection. The committee stands adjourned.